Okay, here we have, starting off with the classic 1911. You see how thin that slide is. You know, this is a 5-inch barrel, and even though the USP is a smaller barrel here in this case, I think it's like 4.5, give or take. Maybe 4.4, 4.5. I digress. There's more mass. So overall, same length as the all these here are built. This is almost 100 years later. So they're built to withstand. But to its testament, 1911 is still around. 1911 is still going to be one of the best handling, most accurate out of the bunch here. But you're like a Harley. It's going to require more maintenance than some more modern designs. This is a steel frame, even though I don't think it's stainless steel. They said this was chrome, like a steel gun with a chrome finish. You want to keep these rails rather lubed or greased, depending what you want. I prefer lube though, and yeah, you don't want to be shooting or carrying these dry. Where these other guns can. They can run dry. Of course, I would clean and lubricate them, but it's not as pertinent where you're going to be like, cracking your rails or hurting the gun. But I prefer to have less friction. The gun's operating even cooler with less friction under lubrication. I digress though. Also, taking apart there's going to be more parts with the and more complicated. It's going to be more time period. Taking this apart and putting it back together, is it a real bitch? Not really, but if you know what you're doing. But for the masses, yeah, the 1911, it doesn't just put one switch or pull one lever down and take it apart. No, so you got to know more what you're doing with this. Also, you can see how this spring system here, very simple, reliable, but these springs are going to wear out much faster. The USP, HK said, you can go minimum of 10,000 rounds of plus P usage. So yeah, no one else is recommending that. The Glock, they said 5,000 rounds of standard pressure usage. You could shoot plus P, but it's going to wear it out faster. The XD, the Springfield guy seemed less knowledgeable. He's like, well, I don't know. I don't know a lot of people even changing it. I don't know, maybe 10,000 rounds, but not saying plus P though. But definitely you can see the guide rod system is beefier on this than the Glock. And this has is this steel? I think it is steel, yes. The other benefit, if you look here on the XD, it has almost like a standoff option. So where if the gun was against a body, it's gonna be a lot harder to make the slides go back a little bit, be out of battery. So if the XD was against someone's body, it's still gonna work. I guess that might have been important when they made that in Croatia. You don't want to end up a hostage if somebody has an XD against your head, because you're not going to push your head back a little bit and try to take out a battery and then grab the gun. No, you're fucked with the XD. The XD is the only one in here though. It has actually an internal extractor like the 1911. But what I like about it, it's exposed inside, so cleaning it, you can just get that out. And this is a stronger design. You see here has a firing pin block. Here has a firing pin block. Here it has a firing pin block. Series 70, no firing pin block. The SIG, I guess you could call this a striker block, but trust me, what'd you trust more? This little thing here or that massive piece of steel? This massive piece of steel. Well, this massive piece of steel in diameter compared to this. And this is on the striker itself, so I don't like that design. It's efficient, I get that. The guide rod system on the 320 is fantastic. You can see it's rather beefy. It's flat wire. The flat wire is going to last a long time. So this 320 system is great here, and the barrel is very accurate, but I digress though. So I hope you enjoyed that. Now, the king of all guide rod systems is the HK. The strength of this design is a 2-stage piston here, and you can see the internal part is only down here. It's even stronger springs on this base here, and that's going to be activated, especially when the slide's using harder pressure ammunition. And it's almost like, so if it's using weaker ammunition, standard pressure, the HK is easiest to rack. It's very easy to rack and chamber around. And so it would even work under, in a way, so this is like tighter and looser at the same time. A lot of engineering on this USP. So If the gun's very dirty and slowing down the slide, or if your hand's not perfectly holding it tight and the gun doesn't get, if you're shooting almost like with a limp wrist or you're wounded, the USP is still going to work. Uh, it's very hard to limp wrist this. I've never seen that. At the same time, if you're using very stiff ammunition, it's not going to hurt the gun. It's still going to work because it gets that second stage piston here that if it needs that, they'll activate this base part here because it's this washer in a sense. As it gets pushed down, I guess the captive guide rod spring. You get what I'm saying? As this comes down, it'll then make contact with this and contact almost like a reserve spring, and then slow down the slide even more. If the round was a heavy cartridge plus P or plus P plus, and accommodate. So basically, this is like variable. It can work the best with the dirtiest and lowest powered gun because the slide is easy to rack. But if that slide's getting slammed with heavy ammunition, there's no design here that's stronger than the USP. The Glock is in the middle of the road. The Glock works, and the parts here will wear out, give or take 5,000 rounds, give or take, depending on how you shoot. But this is really cheap. I think you could replace this for under $15, so maybe cheaper. So cheap on the parts, and swap these out every few years, or depending how much you shoot, and that will keep the gun protected and running reliably. The XD. This part here is going to you can feel the mass on this and how much stronger this is. Now, I don't recommend going to non-factory parts. You start putting non-factory Glock steel guide rods. It wasn't made from the factory. And there's a reason why the Glock frame is actually, it kind of flexes when you cycle it, whether shooting or cycling. There's a reason why they have this polymer inside the guide rod, because the Glock frame is kind of flexes under shooting. That's why you have this guide rod that kind of flexes a little bit because it goes through the system. Well, these other guns don't flex under shooting. So there's pros and cons to all that. So if you put a solid steel guide rod in a Glock, now you have one thing that's not flexing. Because remember, even the barrel kind of tilts up and down when shooting because it unlocks when the slide comes back. So, but the Glock frame actually kind of yaws. It kind of flexes a little when shooting. This solid two-stage system here on the XD in a very beefy here frame. Nods to that, kudos to them. This is a very beefy system. And then on the SIG, this is very strong as well. Here they're utilizing a longer system with flat wire. Flat wire springs wear out very slowly. So this will last a long time. Definitely be well under plus P as well. And this is not a cheaper part. I think these guide rods might be going for $50 to $60. But this is much better, stronger design than the Glock, but it's gonna last longer. But when you have to replace it, it's gonna cost more. The Glock's kind of like, most people don't shoot their guns a lot, so you'd probably be fine with your guide rod forever on your Glock. And if you do shoot a lot, great. You replace the part for $5 to $15. I would keep it stock. Let's look at the barrels. I'm glad you asked. Quite beefy. It's a nitron bath in a sense. It's basically cooked in nitrocarburet, salt bath, and it hardens the steel. And as far as if they're cold hammer forged, I don't know. This gun here goes under a melanite process. As far as the slide, as far as the barrel, I don't know if this gets melanite. I wouldn't think melanite is really a type of nitron bath. So I digress. So SIG just calls a nitron on the XD later on. In the beginning, XDs, the original ones had a Brunaton finish, but they didn't do as well as Beretta, and they had some rust problems. And then they went to a melanite. And this one has melanite, and this gun here is from 2007, and clearly it's holding up quite well, 18 years. And we got some chrome-lined feed ramp there. And is that chrome-lined all the way through the barrel? It might be. And that looks like more traditional rifling, though. And this is the service size, it's a 4-inch. Where all these other ones are 4.5 inch, and this is 5-inch. And then you get to the Glock, about 4.5 inch duty size. I forget which one, Glock and HK. One is hexagonal, one is polygonal, but this helps increase pressure. We get a little more velocity, give or take 5%. It's not traditional rifling per se, but you can't really shoot lead ammunition out of the Glock, especially if you shoot lead ammunition and then you go back to brass or copper jacketed bullets. You could blow up the firearm, especially in 40, which is a higher pressured cartridge for that design. So I digress. You didn't really see a lot of 45s blowing up from that. But anyways, though, yeah. So I would shoot all jacketed bullets, whether it's full metal jacket or hollow points, whatever it is. If you want to shoot lead cheaper ammunition or lead heavy, like a cast lead flat nose for bear defense, I would get. They make some non-factory barrels with traditional rifling. With the XD, you wouldn't have to worry about that because we have traditional rifling. The SIG, I think so too. I digress, but this might be traditional rifling. It kind of looks like traditional rifling. Here we have the Glock, though. You see it's different inside. Almost looks like, yeah, it's different. And then we have the HK. Also, the HK is the strongest barrel. Not just in design, but the strongest barrel, period. The material used for the HK USP, sorry, I'm walking here. I might need to put the phone down. Son of a bitch. The HK USP is using Canada grade steel. You feel the weight on this, and not just because there's more steel, but the type of steel. That's the things that you don't realize, right? Because I'm not a scientist. I can't test the strength of the actual steel. How the fuck would I know? Not just measuring with a caliper. No, the USP is using the strongest materials possible. There's been people that try to thread their own HK barrels and then damage the threader. The HK USP is using Canada grade steel. Nobody else is doing that. This barrel will last, if you get reincarnated, you could have this for 5 lifetimes. And you see this one here has the more modern, it's either hexagonal or polygonal. You could look it up. Glock has one design. But so you're getting a little more pressure, and it has beautiful feed ramp and that chrome line feed ramp there. But you look at that, what the HK quality is superb. There's just nothing better than that as far as a combat pistol. We're not pulling this out because I'd have to pull out the bushing. This is traditional barrel. That is a stainless steel barrel. But see, you have a bushing part here too, which to take that out, you have to turn that here and pull it out. And I'm not taking that out right now. I have to put these back together. All right, we're going to go to the range. Let's just show the frame. See, the Glock is a polymer gun, but it has stainless steel inserts. And so this Glock frame, like I said, it will flex a little in the shooting, which is why you want to keep with the stock Glock polymer guide rod. Nothing wrong with the Glocks. The Glock is a great middle of the road. It works, reliable, it's affordable, specially used, and magazines are cheap, big, available. Feel in the hand is okay. On the 45, it's a little beefier. You know you're carrying this thing. This is going to be the least elegant. In the feel in the hand, I have big hands, so it's fine for me. And this is Gen 4, which I'll start off on SF on the 3rd gen. It's slightly thinner, but trust me, this is still a big boy. The big frame Glocks are beefy. So for a lot of people, this might be too big in the hand. So you get more capacity with this Glock, but it's beefy. And you're also carrying, you're going to know you got it. It is a beefy gun. But the weight on this is the lightest frame. This is Glock Space Magic. The weight on this thing, it feels about maybe a half. It's so fucking light. Let's go to the opposite. Oh yeah, this thing is sturdy. The HK fit and finish, you're gonna have contacts of steel, but the steel you see that there into the polymer on the inside. You see only the exposed here, but this whole piece here on both sides, where the chamber locks up and everything, is solid steel inside of all of that. And then you have the ejector here, but the ejector goes deep down into the frame. There, you see that there, and it's much beefier than the Glocks. This part here is going to be the device that lifts up the firing pin block as you pull. You see that? So if you dropped it without the finger on the trigger, it wouldn't go off, even with the safety off. The trigger has to be pulled. Now, of course, if you put the safety on, trigger's dead. What I like about the USP is, even with the safety on, though, you can still rack the slide or clear it or chamber it, do whatever you want. With the 1911, if the frame safety's on, you can't rock the slide. So here you have more options, and you could actually, this was really one of the first universal. That's just called USP. You could change this to that side. You could make a double ambidextrous safety. You can take it off and delete it and have a double action only. You could delete it, the safety, and have a LEM, which is like a light double action in a sense. You could look up the definition of that, but basically it's a longer, smooth, almost like take up with nothing, and then you have a wall. And then if you keep the trigger back, it will almost stay partially cocked, and have a shorter pull, and then when you let go, it goes back to a hammer down, almost like a double action. So LEM is trying to basically give you like a Glock experience in a polymer hammer fire gun. Some people love it, some people hate it. For me, with the USBs, I like the double single, and depending on my mood, you can carry with the hammer back like this, or carry with the hammer down but safety off. But I'm not confident changing those parts. I would have a gunsmith do it, but I'm not doing any of that. See, the other thing part too is with these hammer fired guns. You see, there's a hammer spring in there. See these old striker guns. The striker gun, in a sense, the frame, yeah, it's holding this part here for the slide, but the grip is dead in a sense. When you have a hammer fired gun, the slide has to defeat the hammer, and the hammer has to have energy to go forward, and then you have the hammer spring. So when you're shooting it, the recoil is not just straight back, the recoil is back and down. So it's almost like it shoves the gun back down in your hand. It's almost like a two-stage piston system. Same thing with here, but to change this part, it's here, there's a little spring in here. I'm not fucking with that. I've done it before. You got springs and sear springs in here. You got to fuck with this part here. The grip's okay, but if you're taking apart here and putting that stuff back, trust me, you're going to bend it. You're going to put it back wrong. And here with the 1911, what you want to do is, you want the hammer cocked here, try to pull the trigger. That should happen, nothing. And then watch. That means the grip safety, the sear inside contact is working well. But also you want where if you pull the trigger, it drops. I can push it back here and drop it slowly, which I prefer. Because if you push this and the trigger doesn't work, that means the sear is bad. If you don't push this and you pull the trigger and it still goes off, you got a real problem. Because you need this, that's part of the safety, not just this, but this. So if you dropped it, the trigger should be dead because you need a hand on it. Well, if you don't put your hand on this, if you just pull the trigger, and I've seen it happen on a used gun, and I pull the trigger and without pushing this in, and it still dropped the hammer. So be mindful on that. Be mindful on it. On 1911, you got to watch right here. If you start seeing a lot of wear right here, your slide is banging up your frame. I do have, it came from this was used. It did come with this shock buffer from Wilson Combat. These are cheap. They say replace these every 1,000 rounds. And this silicone buffer though, when this comes back in the slide, it's going to be hitting this part here. And that silicone buffer will really help prevent some cracking to your frame. Of course, you replace them over time. And of course, if you don't replace them over time, they could break inside there and then maybe perhaps cause a malfunction. So once again, the 1911 is fantastic up on front, but it requires more diligence, more cleaning, and staying on top of the parts. And if you're shooting a lot, you need to replace the parts more in this. Things will wear out. You're going to have grips and grip screws and grip bushings and grips to deal with too as well. Where in this, you don't have to worry about that, which is, again, more parts, more problems. The XD, you can see here, this massive steel here. The back here, believe it or not, this is a big chunk of polymer, but there's so much steel riding here in the middle. And the frame on the XD is really beefy. It's really thick. You can feel it's much heavier than the Glock. And the trigger is metal, unlike the polymer on the Glock. The trigger is metal here. And when you pull it back, it does feel more flush. It has a nicer feel. And it's fully cocked when chambered. And I digress. This is using a larger slide stop, easier to hit. Even though it is thin to the frame, it's rather nice. Whereas on the Glock, it's very thin, very streamlined. It's like a stamp part, very cheap to replace. But the Glock is great at being, stripped down. And if you replace parts, it's cheap. The SIG is using. Remember, the SIG 2. This is not really a frame. It's just a grip, a grip in a sense, and then a module. And this whole part here comes out. So that's the actual firearm. And then you have the ambidextrous slide stop, slide release. And the whole thing is right in stainless steel on the inside. So it feels great. The thing is, though, the whole thing is kept in by this piece here. If this piece wears out here, where it locks into the locking block at the bottom of locks into the barrel. If this cracks or this, you drop it, whatever, you got to replace this part here. It's cheap to replace, but the point is, though, the whole gun is being relied on this piece. Yeah, you can modularly and change things out and go for different sizes and calibers and whatever you want to do. Sounds great. But remember, the frame, like these guns, that's it. That's it. They're done. The steel is molded into the polymer. These 320s, like, no, we could just put the steel in the palm rather than take it out and change it to all these different things. Sounds great, but in a way, it's like the grip itself and the steel itself and the locking lever, takedown lever, are three separate things. And this comes out, everything separates. So when it's all working right, it's very nice, but does complicate it. Does complicate it. And if you do bend your ejector here, this part here, that's not a part. That's all part of the whole frame unit. The gun is dead. You have to send it back, because remember, the insert here is the gun. That's the serials part. The trigger's connected to this. The frame is not the gun. So if you bend your ejector, the whole gun is done. You got to send it back to SIG, and either they're going to rebend it or replace it. Whereas on the Glock, this is a part. And if you have to replace it, I think there's a pin somewhere over there. And then replace the part. I digress. The HK, if you're not going to bend this part. I don't know. I've never seen a USP break. I digress. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. I hope you learned some stuff. Now let's go to the range. The best one, period, as far as durability and reliability. As far as that, if you go, I want something that's going to last 100,000 rounds and keep everything stock, maybe replace the guide rod system. Maybe. Yeah, go with the USP. Go for used. You don't need it new. The Glock is a great middle of the road. It's going to work. Don't expect the best performance. But it works, and the trigger is very easy to get used to. But the feel and looks on it, it's a little on the beefy, ugly side. The SIG definitely has a nice trigger, and I like the look of the SIG better. You're going to get a little less capacity, but the problem is that trigger relieves no room for error on this thing. The trigger's dead right now because it's taken apart, but the where this thing goes off is very quick. I think the new SIG 320, whenever that comes out, they're going to put a dongle on there and upgrade some safety things, which they should have done that. Anyways, I digress. All fantastic 45s. Similar in some ways. Also the 1911 is using this link here, which, okay, great. That's going to wear out, eventually break too, and you need to keep that part lubricated. So 1911, you want to stay on top of it. If you're going to be doing your part, great. Especially where's that here? You want to keep this part here lubricated, because that's what's going to be locked through that hole there. And if you don't keep that lubricated, you get higher friction. And also, it's a very tight fit on the barrel here, and the barrel has two locking lugs. It locks up in the slide. Whereas these other guns lock up in the chamber itself. You see how these guns here, they lock up like that. It's much simpler. And where this locks up in the slide. And there's big grooves in there now. So there's contacts where there's more, if you got very dirt or crud inside those grooves, the gun's not going to go into battery. Also, you need to keep those where the barrel is up here, where they connect the two parts here in the slide. Let's see if I can show you that. You see that? You got to keep that area lubricated. It's going to be a big point of friction, big point of heat. And a lot when it's locked in, it's very tight, fantastic, but understand that. They all work great. If you want to go cheap, buy a used XD and they just run. You want to be, I guess, a little more cooler, I guess, get the Glock. I mean, I'm just saying that the XD somehow it's not cool, and that's a factor. And it's not, XD is not sexy. The SIG is like the bastard right now. So if you want to be the X factor, you're like, yeah, I don't care if it blows off my nuts, go for the SIG. The HK, if you got the money, buy it used though. New, you can see these things $1,200. Or USPs, yeah, and they're hard to get. Used, I found this for a little over $7. So I traded some stuff at the store to get this, but I don't regret that. The USP is the king. 1911 is another factor. Used, you could find them. Good prices depending on the model. But you can, sky's the limit, spend $2,000-3,000 easy, but I wouldn't do that for a combat pistol or for a carry pistol. That's ridiculous. There's plenty of 1911s you can get used under $1,000, really around $500. Used, you can find fantastic stuff. Used, new, you gotta pay for. I would never buy anything new again. Um, I've learned. Anyways, I'll see you guys around. Stay fresh.